Let's just quickly talk about sort of some of the inspirations for this cube. I talked a little bit about some of the design philosophy last time, but there are like one or two cards that I think a lot of cube designers have pet cards that they keep trying to slot into cubes, and they keep getting, they start in the cube and then they leave the cube because the cube isn't like going that direction anymore. So I want to talk about those. There are two main ones, and then just sort of a rough overview of design decisions. So like maybe not fully archetypes yet, but um, common ways of winning with each color, or I think especially for a cube with a lot of combos, how does each color find their combo pieces? So, all right, let's talk about power level. Uh, this is the one of the inspirations for the cube. I've been obsessed with this card since I saw it in Seihires of Kamigawa, especially once I learned about cube, because it feels like such a cube card. Um, like, right? In most cubes, you pick a card they have, and you say one, and then you look through their deck, and as long as it's not one of the like three cards in their hand, they take eight. But first of all, there's the guessing game where you do have a small chance it's in their hand, or you play this on game one and you're not certain what's in their deck, and then the card does nothing, and even if it does something, it's an 8 player damage card for 6 mana. Like, it's so low powered. And so one of my ideas was for this cube was like, can I make a cube actually where someone might put Mind Blaze in their deck? Um, and I can say, so far, that's been true. There is someone who cast Mind Blaze 3 times to win a game so far. That is the thing that has happened. So that's great. And then to give you like another pointer for power level, here's another beloved card of mine, Forced Fruition. Whenever an opponent plays a spell, that player draws 7. I think most of the time when you play this in actual like regular limited, even probably a little bit, I don't have a memory of triple Lorwyn if this was playable. Probably not. Um, but you have the experience of your opponent just kills you, like casts one more spell and then like kills you because they're way ahead because you played a 6 mana enchantment that doesn't infect the board and in fact gives your opponent the top 7 cards of their deck or the top 14 cards of their deck. Or your opponent has a way to interact with enchantments. And so you let your opponent draw 20 cards and they have 5 cards left in their deck, and they, that third spell that draws them the 15th through 21st card is a disenchant that kills Force Fruition, and now your opponent's like way up on cards and can very easily kill you before they deck in 5 turns. So I wanted a cube where things like Forced Fruition could win. I didn't want it to be the case that like, oh, there's no enchantment removal, or like most players don't have a way to interact with enchantments in their entire deck. But maybe they have about one. And so like landing a Forced Fruition, depending on where that card is, like could be like a combo piece on its own. So yeah, that's like sort of where my mind is at in terms of power level considerations. Another example that I don't think I used in the last video is I was partly inspired when I was developing this by the Neoclassical Cube, which I think is an Andy of Lucky Paper Radio design, but it has like a very old school constructed Magic feel. And so there are new cards in it, but only cards that like support things that are old. And a lot of what that means is really powerful setup cards, and then really old, bad, underpowered payoff cards. So like the go-to is, you can draft Recurring Nightmare, Survival of the Fittest, just like full Rexer, and the best reanimation target in the entire cube is probably Symbiotic Worm, right? And you're just like looping and making a bunch of 1/1s or making a big worm back and forth. And that's really great. I like the idea of like you could get fully powered Rex are going, and the thing that you are mostly doing is like making 6/1/1s like every time you do the loop. That's great. And it's not like Archon or you know, I for some reason can't remember Atraxa, right? So that was also like very interesting to me, especially in terms of like the strategic inevitability of it all. Of like, I did my combo and now what? And it's like, oh, I did my combo, but the thing that I used to win is kind of clunky enough that there's still play even after I do my thing. That's like kind of the hope. I will talk very little about the archetypes because I don't just want to go into every card, but I will talk about why, like how every color helps define their combo pieces. And white's a weird one to start with because I think white has some amount of like card draw, card advantage. You can see some of it here. I think honestly the main way that white like combo wins the game, white by far has the most lock pieces, like the most ways to slow the game down, and that like some of the way that white finds its combos to actually win the game is that it is putting combos and lock pieces and stacks pieces into play that stop the opponent from winning the game and just naturally draws them. That is like part of the way that that's like white's version of card advantage is making the game go longer. No one's put Once More with Feeling in their deck yet, I think, which it makes sense. It's quadruple white. It also, I mostly really liked it as a sort of like roundabout exile a bunch of permanents. Because like unlike Scheherazade or whatever, you don't go back to the regular game. You just are in the new game and everything that was in the old game is exiled. So like that's like very funny. You can end up in situations. I think it would probably see a ton of play if it weren't quadruple white. White also I think has the most things that can interact with any amount of permanents regardless of their mana value. So that's another benefit of white that isn't strictly speaking how do I find my A-B combos. Blue. Blue obviously has a bunch of card draw and filtering. This is like one of blue's big strengths sort of in general. So Merfolk Looter. Once I get down to, it has, I think, Drift and Muddle the Mixture are the most transmute cards. I think they have more transmute cards than black. Ponder, Preordain, Dig Through Time, Witness the Future, Lorien Reveal, etc. Blue. I am not concerned about blue having insufficient ways to get sort of like accelerate through their deck velocity. Black. Black is a color that I'm trying to make kind of like it could be an aggro color. So you see a bunch of little 1 and 2 mana creatures with weird evasion to just like plink in. Most of the infinite combos don't gain infinite life. And I did try to, in my most recent draft, I tried to force red-black aggro. I had added in some more cards to like make that more possible. And I went 1-1. The games are still like pretty. The matches can go long in a way that makes it hard to complete a draft currently in the allotted time. At some point in the future, I'll probably talk more about Skulk as a common. I guess there's only like 2 creatures here with Skulk, so maybe it's not as. But I like having different kinds of evasion. First of all, not just flying or fear. And I like Skulk especially in this cube because you can end up in situations where, as we'll see later, especially green has sort of a defender sub-theme. So a lot of like 1/1Xs and 0Xs. There are more creatures in all the colors with 1 or 0 power. So Skulk is like especially bad there. But then there are other situations where your opponent has, a huge number of giant creatures in play, and I like that Skulk can get past all that. I'm not yet convinced that like quote unquote joke of like Skulk being good and bad in very different situations is worth it. The way that Black finds its combos is tutors. I have Demonic Consultation in here. There's no like combo with running out of cards in your deck. There are things, like Mistveil Plains. There are things that can put things into your deck such that if you deck yourself, you could then like be choosing cards every turn to draw. Mostly Demonic Consultation is just a risky, extremely powerful tutor. Like you're just playing it on the merits. Like probably like when it was first printed, no one was trying to deck themselves with Demonic Consultation when they put 4 in their deck. It was just an incredibly powerful card that sometimes killed you. Mastermind's Acquisition, Praetor's Grasp has been really good for me. Obviously, like the more colors you are, the better Praetor's Grasp is at like taking an opponent's combo piece and letting you use it for something. I think the best card I've taken with it so far has been Teferi's Protection. When I was already splashing white. Not really a traditional tutor. There's a Wishclaw Talisman. Honestly, oh yeah, and then there's Yawgmoth's Bargain. Null Profusion. I have Null Profusion and Recycle in this cube. I think they're probably better than most people think they are. I think people are used to these like 6-mana enchantments where like you can get locked out of your draw step or whatever. There's not a ton of ways for that to happen, I think, in this cube. So yeah, I think Null Profusion and Recycle are like a lot better, and it's hard to force pick them because like until I someone sees that, like it's hard to just looking at them. Everyone knows that they're pretty bad. Red. How does red find things? I think red just has a ton of rummaging, or like a decent amount of rummaging. Yeah, Mishra, Merchant of the Veil. Yeah, I feel pretty good about red. Red has things like Demand Answers. It has a few of these sort of rummage card draw spells, and then it also has the most cards that get sorceries or instants back from your graveyard to your hand, or at least tied with blue. So it can be Demanding Answers, grabbing the prize, casting Big Score and Unexpected Windfall, and getting them back, possibly. Yeah, those are the main ways that happens. Red is also like an aggro color. I also have joked that Dragonstorm is one of the aggro decks that like make a bunch of mana and then cast a Dragonstorm for like 2 or 3. Might just be good enough unless your opponent, locks you out of doing other things. I tried to put in dragons that were like interesting or did other things. Very inspired by casting Dragonstorm in an old version of the Pro Tour cube and getting I think Hunted Dragon and Begarden Hellkite, and then my 3rd and 4th dragons were Yosei and Kukusho because they were also in the Pro Tour cube, and like that's very fun, I think, when you cast Dragonstorm like pretty early and you don't like your opponent doesn't necessarily instantly lose, but it like puts them in danger immediately. Yeah, so there's definitely like a red-green ramp / Dragonstorm archetype. Red also has the most things like Festival of Embers, where it is doing the thing, like one of the red-blue archetypes, I guess, is like cast powerful instances of sorceries over and over again, get them back, cast them again. And this is like also kind of an aggro archetype, because you're not trying to go infinite, like you're just trying to, like, before you get locked out of the game, if the main way your opponent has is locking you out of like doing stuff with creatures or attacking or whatever, then like maybe casting a powerful instance or sorcery multiple times to deal about 20 will be enough. Green has some things like Fauna Shaman. It has some other creature tutors. I know it has at least if I go through here, you can end up at like, it has Court of Calling. Once upon a time, Primal Surge isn't a tutor per se. I've absolutely built a Primal Surge deck before where I put my whole deck into play. I've also built an incoming deck, which is like Primal Surge, except it like quote unquote always works. Um, I love incoming. There's like a bunch of open rules questions about how the heck that works. It's fine. It's also just like profoundly silly to play the game of like, I'm gonna put my whole deck into play, you put your whole deck into play, and then we decide who wins. It's an absolute headache, and I love it. Lost in the Woods is its own archetype. I oftentimes tell drafters that there are twice as many forests as any other basic in the side pool, like in the pool for people's sideboards, to gesture the fact that if you want to build a deck where your opponent is playing, only creature ways to win the game, you can sideboard into the 43 forest Lost in the Woods deck. I don't think it's good, but it is just like I love that too much to not have it in here. And then artifacts, things that anyone can use. There's a bunch of little trinkets that do things like Codex Shredder or Inscribed Tablet, Dream Thief Bandana, Key to the City, Shrine of Piercing Vision, Temporal Aperture, etc. I'm not just going to name all the cards. But just ways to little trinkety things to help people go through their deck. Thought Prison, I just want to call it out as one of the cards that I recently added, and I played it and it felt very good. It is the only coercion effect that has no restriction. Previously there's Inquisition of Kozilek, which can't hit expensive spells. So Thought Prison, both being able to hit expensive spells in your opponent's hand and being able to set it on a number or a color of like a spell they might be casting an infinite number of times or a large number of times is like extremely relevant, and it felt very good when I played it. Anything in particular in multicolor? I don't think so. Treacherous Terrain is like kind of new. I wanted another card that did basic land cycling, so there was like more ways to support multiple colors, and that it was a spell that conceivably in the flash oops all flashback, get your spells back, recast them, copy them over and over again, that you could use it to kill someone by casting it like 2 or 3 times. And Treacherous Terrain felt like it really fit the bill and has the benefit of like being able to cycle it early and then using all your flashback things or your get spells back things to get it back and then cast it in a normal way. You can see some of the dragons here that are very good but don't win the game instantly when you Dragon Storm them into play. And then a thing that's also available to everyone is I have every Surveil Land and Temple Scryland. Those felt very important to me, and that the only it is not super heavy on fetches. I have all the MH3 fetches. Those felt really good and important to me in terms of like the level of power. I want it to be possible. I want it to be possible to make a 3-color deck, and a 3-color aggro deck. For whatever aggro means in this cube, I feel I can usually pretty comfortably draft like 2 colors plus a splash or whatever. And I want people to be able to draft 4 colors where they're splashing for individual cards, or they're running Dragonstorm, and it's nice if they have a single black source off of like a temple or a fetchable or whatever, so that if they get in a situation, they can cast Beledros Witherbloom when otherwise they would just put it into play off of Dragonstorm. All right, that was actually much longer than I thought it would go, so let's just look at a quick sample pack and see what we see. Interesting. Okay. Cards that stand out to me here. Duskrose Reliquary. This can hit any artifact or creature for 1 mana. Obviously, you have to sack an artifact or creature to cast it at all. But being able to hit exile any artifact or any creature is really powerful. And I am often looking at the removal first in this cube before, especially for first picks, before I'm looking at combos. because I know that Duskrow's Reliquary is always going to feel good when I draw it in a way that, like, oh, what can Academy Rector get? I don't know. Is there an easy way to kill Academy Rector? I don't know, etc. So like Duskrow's Reliquary feels really good. Recurring Nightmare feels really good. Everyone has or most people have an idea of how powerful Recurring Nightmare can be. It's also like a free way to sacrifice creatures, which in a lot of creature-based combos is like a nice thing to be the case. Mimic Vat is really good for, you know, a deck that might have very specific creatures that are doing specific things to put under it. It also is like can be graveyard hate for your opponent, a single one of your opponent's creature at a time. So like that's very interesting to me. Other than that, I don't know, like a Temple of Deceit seems really good if I end up in blue or black and another color or two. Blue and black have, you know, tutors and card draw spells and stuff, so like having that on a temple is really good. Those are maybe my top three. A bunch of the other stuff, like Squee is one of the best Squees in the cube. Like there are other things that do the things that Squee does, but Squee does it, you know, probably like the cheapest or most efficiently from what I can remember. So that's like maybe fifth. I'm honestly not sure. I haven't played enough of this to know like which archetypes are exciting, and it's so confusing that it's hard for me to look at data from other players' stuff to see what is the case. Then I would say, like, I don't know, tied for fifth or sixth is maybe Phyrexian Unlife. You know, it only costs 3, so it is more interactable than a lot of things, but it has the upside that even if I don't have, you know, a combo with, I'm guessing Solidarity, is it called? The thing where you can't get counters put on you. It has the benefit of if your opponent is going to deal infinite damage to you, they have to do it over 2 turns. So, like, unlike several lock pieces, it does do something when you just find it. So that would be, like, you know, in the 5th most powerful for me. Probably if I wanted to be boring, I would just take Duskrow's Reliquary. If I wanted to have a good time, I would take Recurring Nightmare or Mimic Vat. And I don't know, if I wanted to go 5-color everything, I would take Temple of Deceit. But even if I were trying to go like 5-color control incidental combo, I'd probably just take Duskrow's Reliquary. So that's my pick for this. All right, when I come back, I will probably start looking at card choices, and if I am especially assiduous, I will look at some of the deck pictures from previous drafts that people have uploaded. And if I do that ahead of time, I can like talk about cards that people put in their decks or responses that they had versus things that didn't go there, and whether I think some of those things are like make sense to me or don't make sense to me. All right, until next time.